Greetings, folks, and welcome back to Not Funny Guys Presents Red Dwarf Rewatch. I am your host, Dr. John, and we are plowing right along. We are near the end of Series 5. I had to double check my notes there for a minute. But we are reaching the end of Series 5, and we are on to Angels and Demons. Now, this is another really good one, actually. Like I said, there's very few, in my opinion, bad episodes, but you can fight me on it. I was wrong. Juliet May is still around for a little while here, and she and Grant Naylor directed this episode, written, of course, by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor as the writers and creators, and it was released on the 19th of March, 1992. Let's get into a summary. So, there's an experiment that Crichton and Lister are engaging in, and they are working with a triplicator, and that makes duplicates of an object, and this whole experiment ends up going wrong, causing Red Dwarf itself to explode. The crew escape on Starbuck, but find that the triplicator has actually made 2 copies of Red Dwarf in place of the original. One of these copies has extracted all the good qualities of the former vessel and crew, and the other has extracted all the bad qualities. In turn, the crew board one, first meeting their sort of angelic divine selves, and then have to go to the other one, meeting their demonic selves, as they try to put the parts back together to recreate and bring everything back together as Red Dwarf once again. So we open with Lister, of course, and Crichton basically duplicating the last strawberry in the universe. And this is where we're introduced to the triplicator. And so they're trying to obviously address their supply shortage, and it generates back the original and 2 copies. Rimmer, who walks in on this, he kind of mocks it because it's very slow production value. And Lister's like, it could produce anything. And as he's doing this, he tries one of the strawberries. It turns to be the divine one. And it's like the most glorious strawberry he's ever had. Then he goes to eat the next one, and he's trying to put his finger that there's something wrong. He's making a face, and we look down, and it's rancid. It is filled with maggots. It's kind of gross. Crichton, of course, postulates that basically what has happened is the duplicator has produced, in the copies, one is its absolute best version, and one is like the absolute worst version. And then he's trying to, well, actually, Lister tries to reverse the process, and all of a sudden a whole series of explosions, sparks go off. Holly comes on, she's out of sorts, speaking gibberish, told to abandon ship. The core is overloading, so Red Dwarf is basically going to blow up. They all flee to Starbuck and escape, but the bay doors don't even, they literally have to fly through them, and then Red Dwarf basically explodes, and so they're in like the worst case scenario now. They are debating what to do. There is a note from Crichton that they only have 7 minutes of oxygen, for which Rimmer is very like, this doesn't affect us. We throw their bodies out. He's not being helpful. And they only have 5 hours of basically fuel, with the nearest moon being 6 hours away. And Rimmer, like I said, was trying to basically backstab crew when Lister calls him out for it. And then Crichton makes a pointed statement that Rimmer is running on emergency backup power, and he actually only has 4 minutes. And all of a sudden, he is on board to play being boys from the Dwarf. So they like, okay, let's pull ourselves together. They go back to scan the wreckage to find like oxygen tanks and things that they can use, things that may have survived. When all of a sudden they discover 2 big to be debris objects. And apparently what they've discovered is the 2 copies of Red Dwarf. So, just like with the strawberries, we have the one that is succulent and divine, and the other that is, I believe, Lister colorfully puts it, fish bait. However, just like the copies, apparently there's a limited lifespan of about an hour for both of these ships. So Crichton wants to basically go back on board, find their triplicators, use that to basically reverse engineer and reemerge and bring back the original Red Dwarf, but they have a time limit. They land on the Divine one. Rimmer gets plugged into the battery to recharge, and they go onto the Divine ship. Everything's white and beautiful. It's like Lister goes and orders a pot noodle and has the very first edible pot noodle in his life. You know, basically it's been the best thing he's ever tasted. Then they meet the Divine Lister and Divine Cat, and they are basically the higher versions of themselves in a way. which the cat finds hard to believe since apparently this version of him, this divine version of him, does not care about clothes or air, vanity or any of those things. They go to the meditation chamber where they meet up with the other Crichton and Rimmer and the other divine versions of Crichton and Rimmer there as well. Rimmer basically calls them all a bunch of losers, and Crichton says these are who we could have been without any negativity in ourselves, if it was all removed. Rimmer basically says they're a bunch of twaddles and hippies. Crichton reminds him that Jesus was once like this, and Rimmer says, yeah, long hair and no job, obviously. They find the triplicator parts, but there's only half. They are missing the other half, and apparently the only place to locate them is over on the fishbait version of Red Dwarf. Before they get to leave to do that, they're subjected to like some weird interpretive dance. There's talk of haikus. When they finally get a distress call from the other ship, and they're immediately, the divine version themselves are jumping to go and help. The ship is an absolute dump when they get over there. They break up, and when they're in the cargo bay, and I think this is kind of smart, the way they break them up is it's 2 of the regular crew members and 2 of the divine crew members, but, you know, for sake of the duplication, when it's Lister and Rimmer, they have the divine Cat and Crichton. It's very smart. So you just mix and match the groups, and that way you don't have to worry about the, you know, shooting angles or the CGI or the whatever you need to duplicate people in a scene. They're in the cargo bay when they're attacked. Divine Crichton gets shot multiple times, fearing that the other person's gun has gone off accidentally. They then kill the divine Cat and Crichton both when they basically throw them a bomb, and they think it's a sparkly, welcoming orb. Rimmer basically runs away. Lister gets knocked out when he wakes up to find his evil self, and then he starts running from his evil self, the evil Crichton, and he finally runs into evil Rimmer, who is dressed like either like a Mad Max, I think, yeah, Fury, you know, Mad Max, one of those freak characters like the Mohawk guy and the ones on motorcycles and vehicles attacking that place that had the fuel. I don't remember which Mad Max that is. Rimmer looks like one of those guys. Crossed with like a BDSM, basically, like dominatrix kind of thing. He has a hollow whip too. Like he has like a fetish freak. It's really creepy. He's probably the creepiest of the whole bunch. The other party, Cat and Crichton with the divine Lister and Rimmer, are off looking for the parts. They split up. The evil crew has Lister as a prisoner now, and they put a control chip in his neck and decide to control him. They test it out by basically having him torture himself, you know, pour hot water all over his own crotch. And they want the other Red Dwarf because this one is breaking down, obviously. So he's under their control. They make him, like I said, make him pour hot water, put him through the paces of kind of like torturing himself. They make him eat a tarantula. And if we remember, that's actually something that he finds utterly disgusting and terrifying for himself. These are like the very worst versions of their deep down subconscious horrible selves. Cat and Crichton finally do find the missing pieces for the triplicator. They are down to 8 minutes to fix these things before the hour is up. Now the remote-controlled Lister shows up with a knife. He encounters the divine Rimmer and the divine Lister. He stabs the divine's version of himself and kills him. And then he rips into the divine Rimmer and pulls out his hollow projector and crushes it, killing him. So now all the divine versions are dead. Bunch of peaceniks, you know. Meanwhile, Rimmer, Cat, and Crichton are put the triplicator back together. Rimmer has apparently been hiding this whole time, and Lister's missing. When Lister does show up to kill them with an axe this time. Cat takes off his mouth bandage. He starts trying to warn them he's trying to kill them. He tries to kill Cat several times. I think he comes into a final talk of 3 by the end. He goes to get the bazookoid, starts firing a ball, telling them to duck, move to the left, move to the right. Crichton comes up, gets behind him, and chloroforms him. That's pretty funny. They all get on Starbug. They leave this Red Dwarf, and they activate the triplicator. Lister then wakes up still being controlled and tries to sabotage Starbug. Crichton removes the implant, but it lands in the scuffle on Cat's neck, and he goes kind of crazy. They finally remove it and throw it in the back. Both Red Dwarfs disappear, and the normal one with Holly then reappears. Finally, they go into the back of the cargo bay. Lister sits down, and the spinal implant is on his butt. And he's still being controlled, and Cat shoots the claws that apparently the evil Lister had gotten on the ship. And then Cat and Rimmer are very excited about leaving the implant in for a week so they can make Lister slap himself. That brings us to the end of that episode. So, next time, Final episode of Series 5, Back to Reality. And that is a great one, too. Like I said, there are so many few bad episodes of Red Dwarf, in my opinion. They're all good quality. I think that's the thing when you have the creators of a show, original creators doing most of it, you keep that kind of good quality really quite high. So I'm looking forward to that, and then we will be on to Series 6. So that's awesome. So next week, we will have the last episode, and then also next week we'll move on to Series 6. So we're chugging right along here. So please remember, like, subscribe, share, comment. Want to keep this thing going. We're also looking for any kind of feedback, things we can do to make improvements, change up the episodes, the approach. I am very wide open to it, as I always am. And of course, the best way to do this is to reach out to us on our socials, but in particular, in the ticker below, our email, notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. Please write, suggest things, anything about the YouTube channel. I'm coming up, well, I've got a little while, but I will eventually need to make decisions about what our next television show will be. I've got a couple I'm juggling around I've mentioned previously. We'll get some more decision making when we get a little bit closer. And I'm also looking for input from the audience. So like I said, you can reach us at that email with any kind of comments, feedback, anything you want to talk to us about. And of course, you can always talk to us not just about what we do here on the YouTube channel, but if you follow any of our other podcasts, which we have a couple. In fact, our main one, Not Funny Guys, present Off the Reels, where we talk about movies. We are, and by the time you see this, we will be very close to wrapping up the Star Wars run. So we've been doing chronological order. So we did episode 1, Phantom Menace, episode 2, Attack of the Clones, episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And since we were going chronologically in universe, we did Solo, a Star Wars story, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. We moved on to the original trilogy, episode 4, A New Hope, episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, and episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And we are in the process of coming to the end of our run of the sequels with episode 7, The Force Awakens, episode 8, The Last Jedi, and finally next week we will have episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So check those out. We will have those. If that's not your thing, I think we've got we're going to do a Martin Scorsese little 3-pack palate cleanser afterwards. So keep an eye out for that. And then I think Eric is up for picking our next run of whatever movies we're covering. So if you like movies, go check that out. We have a lot of fun. If that's not your cup of tea, you are more interested in horror films specifically, Casey and Eric are doing that since it's Halloween. They're neck deep in that. But they do Wrestling with the Horror of It All, where they talk wrestling, pro wrestling, WWE mainly, and they talk horror films. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please check that out. If not, we do have one other. We do have our Not Funny Guys present Thinking About Thinking, which is a more intellectual academic podcast, but we try to keep it fun. I do that one with Dr. Kristen, or Dr. K as Casey calls her. We both are academics. We talk about things, mainly stuff that we're thinking about. It gets a little all over the place with all kinds of things, politics, society, AI, the like. We keep it short, conversational. So if that's something that seems like interesting, you should try that out. Like, subscribe, comment, share any of these. We would much appreciate it. We're trying to grow these things. In fact, we're thinking about moving the main podcast over to YouTube eventually. So eventually you'll be able to see our ugly faces too. But in the meantime, don't be a smeghead. Keep it not funny. And I'll see you soon.